they create that kind of a solution which can be more personalized to me. So my prompt to chat GPT versus your prompt to chat GPT should not result into the same response, but we should be able to get more personalized services when we are interacting with the AI system basis our private data. That could be one interesting way where this kind of a hyper personalized services across your shopping experience, across your healthcare, across your education. I think that might be a very interesting era to see. And we are working with several projects in order to.
Hi everyone, welcome to another conversation on NEWFORUM, the research network for open learning in the arts and sciences, pioneering a new culture for internet design. Today I'm joined by Ravi Agrawal, Director of Growth at Privado ID, formerly Polygon ID, to explore how AI agents form their identities and the guardrails that keep them on track. We'll dig into the ways these agents mature, their intersection with Web3, and what it all means for our data economy. Finally, we'll look at the shifting landscape of digital identity in an AI-driven world. Stick around, there's a lot to uncover today. Hi, Ravi. Welcome to this episode of NEWFORUM.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Amazing. Let's start with a quick intro about yourself, your background, and how you found yourself in Web3.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Ravi Agrawal. I'm Director of Growth at Privado ID, which was previously called as Polygon ID. So, I started my career as a business and strategy consultant, had been there for almost 18 odd years, working with large financial institutions like JP Morgan, Barclays, HSBCs, and others. And sometime in 15, 16, I got introduced to Bitcoin technology. And since then, this technology has been always keeping my attention. So had been trying to explore, learn around both permission chain, public chains, and also had a small instinct of running my own blockchain startup in the past. And since mid 2020, I've worked with Polygon Labs and in several capacity of strategy growth. And then with the spin-off of Polygon ID into Privado ID, I am now focusing on the identity side of it. So super excited to be here and sharing my views.
Exciting. So let's dive right in. So, what does AI agent identity really mean in practical terms? And is it about giving AI systems a unique fingerprint, or is it more about establishing trust and accountability?
Yeah, I think overall, when we talk about know your agent, I think the analogy that we can bring in from the world is know your customer. So KYC has been a known industry term. I think similarly, we are now approaching towards something what we call as a KYA, so know your agent. I think with the tremendous growth that we are seeing at the moment with agents, what we are noticing is that it's going to be very, very important in order to identify the agents. And this is where at Privado ID, we feel that how can we create that unique identifier that could act like a fingerprint for an agent? So this unique identifier can be only given to one agent, and we can achieve that kind of a singularity for an agent, which would be very important because then if we know the unique identifier for an agent, we would be able to add credentials to this particular identifier. The way we all have our national ID as the unique identifier that represent an individual, and then we add several credentials on top of it, whether it is my education credential, whether it is my employer credential, whether it is my financial credential, can be on a similar line attach different credential to an AI agent so that we would have more reputation being established for an agent. And when a user is interacting with this agent, they better identify this agent and they understand what skill set, what kind of an organization it belongs to, and so on, which eventually bring that kind of a trust needed for interacting with this agent.
And is this because I'm thinking now agent is it's quite a buzzword now, and everybody's talking about agent, and I think in a couple of years, everyone is gonna have an agent. And so this concept that you just explained about Privado, what you're doing, the solutions you're building now, is that going to be scalable in the future? Like I cannot imagine how is that possible? Like the whole almost, I mean, maybe my mom is not gonna get an agent, I'm pretty sure. But you know where I'm going at with this. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. I guess that you're talking about one agent, but I would make it plural. I would say that
Got
we
it.
all might hold multiple agents,
Yes,
right?
even
So
worse.
and I see that is going to be, quite, I would say, operationally optimized as well, because then we could have those agents created for individual task, and then they can, help in terms of getting that one particular task well done, and then we can have maybe agentic workflows where multiple agent can talk to each other in order to get some more complex tasks being done. But then, yeah, I think. I'm super optimistic that this is where we would be able to, I would say, take away some laborious work, whether it is, let's say, planning a holiday for a week and then, running between the airlines, the hotels, and booking up the amusement park ticket. How can we let the agent take care of those laborious work, where they would be also able to add some kind of an communication between the agents, and they take those kind of decisions which make them different from the chatbots, right? So I think this is where we would have different agents, where some agents would be able to do some booking related activities, some may be able to do some financial related activity, education related activity, and we would see that happen sooner than later. That's what I am bullish on.
And how do we avoid hallucinations? Because if all these agents are interacting and there's, you know what I mean? That's sort of, I think, especially when it comes to medicine or something that is more life-threatening, how do we rely on these agents, you know?
You're super right on that one, and I would try and do an analogy of, let's say, what we have seen in the early part of the internet, right? So if we take ourselves back, let's say in the late 90s or early 2000, this is where we were little skeptical when we were interacting with internet, right? So somebody buying a good worth of $500 might been very unheard, right? We used to go in a shop, make those expensive purchases offline instead of buying it online. Now, fast forward today, we are even purchasing $1 million worth of real estate online, right? That is a kind of a comfort that we have got from where we started using a new technology that was changing entirely the way we operated. I think we are in a similar kind of an era where we might change the way we operate. Uh, Originally, I think if we talk about the previous kind of evolution from a tech perspective, we have been using mainly the data analytics in terms of getting things done. But we are moving towards the next step where we are talking about intelligence out of all this interaction. Now, your question is valid in terms of the concerns about hallucination. How do we trust this kind of an agentic workflow? I think these are things that eventually should get more mature. We
Mm.
should be able to find out what are those kind of governance principle, how can we rely on them, is there a verifiability that can be brought in, can we trust those verifiability, and so on. I believe we are in still very early stage. This has been not more than 16, 18 months that we have been introduced to this technology, and this has taken us by storm. But I believe these are valid questions and they need to be answered in order to make those agents as a mainstream, I would say, companion for us.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ravi, can agent and AI be used interchangeably? Can I say, when I say agent, would you automatically think AI? And when I say AI, would it ring the bell of agent?
I will not do that. I think in a general form, in a general term, if you wanted to use it, what is your interface with AI? Probably agents is a way of interfacing with the AI, but I think there are various dimensions. So if I need to put it, I would put AI maybe into, let's say, large three buckets. One is onto the data side, where we are talking about how can we collect those data that may be utilized for AI model training. So I have the first vertical, which I call as data, second vertical as compute. This is where all the data would be utilized by models and they would be able to compute to generate that kind of an intelligence. And then the third segment is where we are talking about inferences, and those inferences are where we are able to interact. And that's where the agents comes in, where we would be able to interact and get the outcome from the compute that has been done.
So this is the maturity model, sort of like, could you
No,
walk through that, like the stages of the AI maturity?
No, I would say rather this is a value chain in terms of we first of all collect that data, use that data to train the model so that model gives us those kind of responses or inferences which we can consume, right? So if you go today and ask whether, let's say, a particular mango, is that mango sweet enough, right? So the images that have been fed into the model using, let's say, those 10,000 mangoes originally, whether that would let the model decide whether this mango is now sweet enough. I think that is where the value chain would be to collect the data, to train the model, and generate the inferences.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah. Now, speaking of mango, it would be nice to have a mango right now. Okay. But yeah, so back to this concept of decentralization and centralization, and we cannot talk about AI agents without, discussing the key differences, especially for our audience. We have such a diverse audience, and so I'd like for you to talk a bit about the key differences between decentralized AI and centralized AI.
Sure. Yeah, I think this goes back briefly to the question that you're talking about the
Yes.
maturity models as well. So I believe, when we started with the chat bots in the earlier days, I think those were the type of bots which used to give some kind of responses based upon some predefined set of questions. I think those were the early, I would say, non-intelligent agents in some shape or form. But then maybe adding some kind of an LLM to it makes it like a co-pilot where we are talking about how we can get assistance from the AI. And this is where it can augment in some type of task and help us get the better response leveraging the models. I think moving on to the next step is where we are really talking about the agents which are more autonomous in terms of taking certain decisions, and they can generate the decisions or the outcome basis their integrations with other systems, so they can access the other systems, try to come out with some meaningful responses. Moving on, I think this is where it really become more interesting, and this kind of agents are more autonomous and they can operate with a lot of independent and automaticity, and they can perform more complex tasks, and they would not really need too much of a human intervention. Given a task, they would find out their own ways in terms of talking to other systems or talking to other agents and get the task delivered. But these are more still centralized agents. And this is where, if we reach to the top of the pyramid, we were talking about like more decentralized agents. So some of the learning from various authors and thought leaders in the space where they are trying to define how that decentralized autonomous agent look like. This is where it would work with the ecosystems like blockchain, where we are talking about the autonomous agents operating in a decentralized environment, in a blockchain based environment, and they will not necessarily be controlled by one particular party, but they can be more autonomous and more decentralized.
So is this where you see the intersection of AI and Web3 in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I think with Web3, I think there are various ways of leveraging how AI would be able to help. And I feel that if we are talking about AI agents that can be more trustworthy, where we really don't need to worry about whether this transaction is going to be done in an atomic way or not. I believe blockchain brings very, very important framework, or I would say the Lego pieces that forms the bedrock for the agents to operate more autonomously, and for a user also to feel more confident when interacting with this kind of agent. So, how can we have, let's say, the agent identity being anchored onto a chain where we can understand that who is the owner of this agent, who is the developer of this agent, and then I think those kind of information are immutably present on a chain. Those kind of information are going to be important parameter in order to create that kind of a trust layer for the agents. At the same time, if we are talking about various developers coming together in order to create a particular model or maybe particular agent, I think how those developers are also being incentivized or capitalizing based upon the revenue generated by this agent in a decentralized form. And this is where again blockchain technology would be super helpful in order to have the proportionate share by the individual developer when they are co-building this kind of a solution. So I am super fascinated by a fact that Web3 or blockchain technology can help in terms of creating those wider consumer solutions when it comes to AI.
And could there be any potential risks as well, with having more? I mean, I guess like you can never say too much transparency is a bad thing, but maybe with like data security regulation, something.
No, I think there are areas where I believe the design consideration should not cross the fence, right? So what goes on chain has to be always keep in mind from a data compliance perspective. So there are guidelines from GDPR, CCPA, PDP. I mean, these are all different frameworks for data compliances. So it needs to be thought through from those compliances, and crossing those fence should be avoided from a design consideration perspective. But yeah, I think this is very early stage, and we would see what are the best practices, what are the frameworks that are required in order to develop a more mature and scalable solution.
Mhm. And let's talk a bit about data economy. Like, how do agents fit into the idea of data economy?
Yeah, I think uh, overall, when we talk about data economy, I believe this is where we might have to try and bring user interest also into the overall data ecosystem, right? So there's a huge rush in order to consume that data for training the models, right? If we talk about all those big boys who have been consuming publicly available data in order to train their model, and they are keeping those model closed source and capitalizing on those model. There is a narrative that is building up where it says that the AI models would be short of data and they would have exhausted all public text data by 2026. And this is based on one of the reading that I had from Mustafa Suleiman, who is CEO for AI. And he has been talking about data getting consumed by the model so quickly that we would be short of the data. And this is where, models would try to go hunt for new sources of data. And companies would like to get the access of private data of the users. And if the user is able to contribute their private data for any purpose of model training, there is a huge upside for the user also to get incentivized for such kind of a private data contribution. And I feel that overall data economy could be a win-win situation where a user who's contributing their private data for model training should be incentivized, and we can continue the accelerated way of model training and have more mature AI models.
That's exciting. Yeah. Um, So now we talked a little bit in the beginning how agents are going to be sort of like this, you said digital extension of ourselves. We talked a bit about that. So I'm just curious how our digital identity, how does this evolve? Are we at risk of losing control over how we're represented online and just everything in between? I mean, I think that I'm like in the future, how are we gonna even define a human versus like how do we navigate all this?
So you're so right. I think this is a problem even today, right? Forget about the wave that we are seeing
Right.
for the AI agents, but I think this is happening today. So, people impersonate many of us, and it's just not that difficult to impersonate. Whether it is, putting your profile picture on their profile pictures and putting in a very similar name that is very difficult to catch up. Maybe just mixing up one alphabet here and there, and then sounding very similar. I think this is happening very easily online, as well as a user can create multiple those identifier, whether there are multiple email IDs being created or multiple Twitter handles being created or several number of phone numbers being holded by a person. I think these are various ways where they gamify the system, or they gamed the I would say imperson or rather game the system when they need to identify whether it's a human or a bot. And it becomes very, very difficult at the same time for various I would say established player as well, whether they would be able to classify a real human versus a bot. Especially I think we have been hearing various cases in the video KYC, when the person sitting behind the camera and then the KYC is being conducted. The current systems are not able to differentiate between the AI agents that can mimic like a real human, blinking the eyes, moving the head up and down, and they are able to fool the video KYC systems in order to get the KYC done. So I think this is a problem that we are seeing, and I think it would continue to grow as the AI system become more smarter. At Privado, we are trying to try and find out different ways of identifying, first of all, a bot versus a human, and we believe that there may not be one single approach in order to differentiate the agents and bots versus real human. We'd have to bring it and do maybe more, I would say, 360-degree approach where we might use some kind of a biometric test in order to, check the face or a liveliness for a human, but at the same time, try and find out whether a user is using pretty much a similar credentials when they are ordering a food, when they are ordering a taxi on Uber, and then combining those credentials to make the cost of fraudulency going higher to make a fraud, right? And that is where you would be able to defeat it. If the cost is too high in order to fool the system, probably we would see the probability of somebody doing to clean, to do that kind of a fraud would reduce over a period of time. So I
Right.
think that is one approach where we are differentiating, bots or I would say real human versus agents.
Mhm. Sounds really good to me. Excited to see where it all evolves. And Ravi, is there anything that you would like to talk about today that we haven't touched on that you want to mention if we
No, I think maybe one thing that I particularly feel excited is that it's an evolution where it would be difficult to say that we would not be able to participate in this kind of a growth. It seems to be inevitable at the moment. There is a lot of development that has happened, and being part of this would help in terms of getting those productivity with the kind of activity that we do. So I feel excited when it comes to the kind of use cases and the development that we are seeing with AI. I particularly feel that it's a need where we might have to work with the agents, with the AI powered solution in order to get that kind of an hyper personalized services. So imagine a situation where my data, which is still remaining private, and I'm able to share with the agents, and they would make more sense out of it, and they create that kind of a solution which can be more personalized to me. So my prompt to chat gpt versus your prompt to chat gpt should not result into the same response, but
Okay.
we should be able to get more personalized services when we are interacting with the AI system basis our private data. That could be one interesting way where this kind of a hyper personalized services across your shopping experience, across your healthcare, across your education. I think that might be a very interesting era to see, and we are working with several projects in order to bring that kind of an identity layer and a governance layer overall for the agent economy to come forward. So super excited to see what we are enabling and what we are building together.
Super excited to see it too. I'll be following Privado. I chat with your co-founder, David.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was
Right.
fun in Brussels in the summer,
Oh, nice.
ETH conference, and he's
And that
such a cool person. And so I'm super excited that we have people like you, and him, and all these amazing innovators and builders of the new internet who are working really hard, to make it all ethical for us. So, Ravi, where can our listeners and community find you on your social platforms if they want to follow you?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's pretty straightforward. That's my first name and last name. So Twitter, it's Ravikant Agrawal. Similarly on LinkedIn, I go very easy there, and look forward anything to do with AI, Web3, identity. I'm always up for a chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ravi. And thank you all for listening to us, tuning in and listening to us today. If you want to get more involved in our community, make sure to follow us on our social platforms. We're NEWFORUM_NCO on X, and we're also on NewOS. We'll have all the links in the description below. And thank you again, and see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Great chatting. See you.